On the dark night of September 9th, 1980, a supersized cargo ship was battling the waves in the Pacific Ocean. Larger than the Titanic and towering 16 stories high, this ship could easily be called a fortress of steel. But just a few hours later, it had completely vanished without a trace. No radio signals were received. No debris floating in the ocean. How did a ship weighing hundreds of thousands of tons disappear without a single sign? For 20 years, authorities told the world just one thing. The ship sank. That's it. But when the father of one of the crew members decided to uncover the truth, what he found beneath the ocean's surface shocked the world. Welcome back to another video on a Flare TV. On the evening of September 9th, 1980, a massive cargo ship named MV Derbyshire was cutting through the deep waters of the Pacific Ocean, heading toward Japan. But from the east, something deadly was approaching. Typhoon Orchid, a storm growing more dangerous by the hour. MV Derbyshire had already been at sea for 8 weeks. It had carried 150,000 tons of iron from Canada, crossed the Atlantic, sailed past southern Africa, through the Indian Ocean, and was now nearing its final destination. On board were 42 experienced professionals, engineers, helpers, and experts, counting down the final hours of their journey. But fate had other plans. The ship's captain, Jeffrey Underhill, had 20 years of experience. He was leading this mission, and his wife had already flown to Japan from England to meet him. But that reunion would remain only a dream. Captain Underhill was relying on weather reports. He had faced many storms in his career and believed Derbyshire could handle Typhoon Orchid. The nearest safe harbor was too far. So, fighting the storm was the only option. The captain reduced the ship's speed and turned the bow slightly toward the waves, a standard maneuver to maintain stability during storms. He also sent out an emergency message, warning about the worsening conditions and sharing the ship's current location. But the storm's fury intensified. Waves had risen over 10 meters high, some nearly as long as the Derbyshire itself. At over 1,000 feet in length, Derbyshire was longer and wider than the Titanic and stood as tall as a 16-story building. This wasn't an ordinary ship. It was a state-of-the-art steel fortress built to withstand the world's deadliest seas. And that's why Captain Underhill saw Typhoon Orchid as just another challenge. But deep within the dark ocean, something unthinkable was about to happen. That night, 2 other cargo ships also faced the same typhoon. By morning, both ships had reached port safely. But MV Derbyshire had vanished. No signs, no signals, gone. For the next 20 years, no one could explain what had happened that night. The last radio message from Derbyshire came on the evening of September 9th, 1980. No distress calls followed. No final communication. 6 days of complete silence. Even the ship's owners didn't report it missing right away. They believed it was just a communication failure and that Derbyshire would soon appear on the radar. But as the days passed, there was still no sign of the ship. On September 15th, concern finally surfaced and an international search mission was launched. Helicopters, planes, and naval ships scanned the last known coordinates. But not a single piece of the massive ship was found. After 6 days, the search operation was called off. Authorities concluded the ocean had simply swallowed it whole, without any investigation. The media dropped the story just as quickly. Families of the lost crew sent many requests for a full investigation. But we're told, there's nothing to investigate. For the grieving families, this was unacceptable. They began to feel that something was being hidden. The MV Derbyshire was built just 4 years earlier in Britain's famous Swan Hunter shipyard. It was a global OBO carrier, designed to carry both oil and iron ore, maximizing efficiency and profits. It never returned empty. If it dropped oil, it would return carrying iron ore. Compared to traditional ships, Derbyshire could generate 30% more revenue. It belonged to the elite bridge-class ships, only 6 of which existed worldwide. But behind this advanced design was a harsh reality. Swan Hunter, once a titan in shipbuilding, was under immense pressure from faster and cheaper Japanese and South Korean shipyards. To survive, they began cutting costs. And perhaps that's where the seeds of Derbyshire's fate were sown. In the aftermath of the disaster, families were left in the dark, except for one man who turned his personal tragedy into a mission. Peter Ridyard had lost his young son aboard the Derbyshire. But Peter wasn't just a grieving father. He was an experienced ship surveyor who had spent his life studying oceans and ships. When Peter began investigating, he made a shocking discovery. Just 18 months after Derbyshire vanished, another bridge-class ship, the Tyne Bridge, was caught in a storm in the North Sea. Suddenly, cracks began forming in the steel near the superstructure. The captain ordered an emergency evacuation, and the crew was airlifted to safety. Miraculously, the ship was saved. Peter examined it and found cracks in the front section. Further documents revealed that every bridge-class ship had developed cracks, and all in the exact same spot. These ships were being secretly repaired in ports, and Peter found something even more alarming. The ships had not been built according to their original design plans. Some parts had been altered in haste. Now Peter had evidence that could reopen the Derbyshire investigation. He submitted everything to the Department of Transportation, but they refused to act. They said the case was closed, and there was no plan for a new inquiry. Authorities turned a deaf ear, but the families raised their voices. In 1984, they formed the Derbyshire Family Association, with one goal: to uncover the truth. In 1986, another bridge-class ship, Kowloon Bridge, cracked and grounded near the Irish coast. Its hull, already weakened, couldn't survive the Atlantic's rough seas. This was the last of the 6 bridge-class ships. In it, too, had not received the critical repairs Peter had discovered. This time, the British government finally responded. They reopened the Derbyshire investigation. For 6 months, experts debated. Some blamed the design, others blamed the sea. But Peter's evidence pointing to structural failure was completely ignored. The final report stated, there was no structural failure. Derbyshire was just another victim of the sea. For the families, it was a slap in the face. Their fight seemed to be coming to an end, but they still believed the secret wasn't buried at sea. It was buried in the system. They didn't give up. In 1994, working with the International Transport Workers Federation, they launched a private investigation. They pooled their funds to search for Derbyshire, 14 years after its disappearance. Amazingly, in just 23 hours, they located the ship 4 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, in one piece. A massive success. Detailed photographs of the wreck were taken, and an investigation continued for 6 more years. When the final report came, the truth was crystal clear. A compartment at the front, called the bosun's store, was poorly built, not according to the original design. During the storm, its door broke and seawater flooded in. Thousands of gallons filled the compartment, weighing down the front. The bow dipped lower into the ocean. Higher waves smashed into it, breaking ventilators and flooding the machinery room. Eventually, the hatch cover of a cargo hold, the size of a tennis court, also broke. As water filled one container, the ship tilted even more. One by one, the containers sank. And finally, the great steel fortress of Britain slipped into the darkness of the Pacific Ocean. When the investigation report was published, it revealed all bridge-class ships had the same design flaws. Weak hatch covers, cracks near the bosun's store. The families had once believed it was a major structural fault. But the truth was even worse. It was a series of small, avoidable flaws that sank the mighty Derbyshire. In the 1970s, ships often sank. For authorities, it became a number game. But thanks to the relentless efforts of the Derbyshire families, the entire shipping industry was exposed. New ship designs were introduced. Rules were tightened. Safety inspections became more strict. They didn't just find a lost ship. They forced the entire industry to change. Even today, many maritime safety rules exist because of MV Derbyshire, which still rests silently 4 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. We hope you liked and shared this Flare TV video. Thank you for your continued support and heartfelt comments. See you in the next thrilling episode.